the future of the High Court, some possible names on the president's short list of nominees. National security, the FBI and CIA reveal the biggest terror threats. Pope Francis speaking off the cuff, why his remarks often raise questions. And the importance of a single word, the Knights of Columbus define genocide. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Thursday, February 25th, 2016. Good evening from Washington. Thanks for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick. Might the president nominate a Republican to succeed Justice Antonin Scalia? Jason Calvi reports tonight from the Supreme Court. Jason?
Brian, two sources told the Associated Press that the White House was considering the Republican governor of Nevada. Today, that governor says he's not interested. The White House search moves forward, even though Republicans promised no votes, no hearings on any nominee.
The name of the president's Supreme Court pick could be inside this binder. And the White House is looking for help from every member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, including the committee's top Democrat.
I'm having discussions with the president, as I have with presidents of both parties in the past, and I've never talked about who they can.
So you're not giving him a name, but maybe should it be a moderate?
I will talk with the president, but one of the reasons why I think both Republican presidents and Democratic presidents have actually taken my advice or listened to my advice, they know I give it just to them.
There was talk Nevada Republican Governor Brian Sandoval could be on the list.
What would it do for the Republicans then if the president nominates a Republican and there's no hearing, no vote? What does that say?
I'm not going to get into that speculation.
But Democratic frontrunner Hillary Clinton is.
And I know the governor has done some good things, but I sure hope the president chooses a true progressive.
A pro-abortion group criticized pro-choice Sandoval for having a checkered history on abortion. We asked Michigan Democratic Senator Debbie Stabenow if the president should listen to that.
The president is a man himself of great judicial temperament. He will listen to everyone, but he'll make the judgment that he thinks is best for the country.
But Republicans say it should be the judgment of the next president.
There is a precedent not acting on a nominee in the middle of a presidential election.
And today, Democratic senators gathered right here outside the Supreme Court to call on Republicans to have hearings and votes on whoever it is that the president picks. On Tuesday, President Obama will meet with the top Democratic senator as well as the top Republican senator and the two top the Republican and Democrat on the Judiciary Committee. Brian?
So what do the polls say about public opinion on this, Jason?
Well, a brand new Pew poll found today that 56% of Americans say that Congress, the Senate, should have a hearing and should have votes on anybody that the president picks.
Jason Calvi at the Supreme Court. Thank you, Jason. Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. Republicans face their final debate before Super Tuesday meeting tonight in Houston. Senators Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio hope to take momentum away from Donald Trump. He's won the last 3 states. Trump says he's prepared for tonight's debate, and everyone who has attacked him has gone down.
The frontrunner in this race, Donald Trump, has actually alluded to the fact that he thinks parts of Obamacare are pretty good.
Now, Cruz's credibility is being questioned after failing to consolidate evangelical support in Nevada and South Carolina. The Texas senator thinks he's being treated unfairly.
I'm curious how many reporters asked Marco Rubio after losing 4 states in a row, so when do you drop out?
Ohio Governor John Kasich and Dr. Ben Carson remain in the race, still believing they have a way forward. The next big test for Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders is Saturday's South Carolina Democratic primary. Former President Bill Clinton is busy this week campaigning for his wife. Sanders is spending the day outside of South Carolina, stumping for votes in the Great Lakes states. The White House touts President Obama's record as his second term winds down. Lauren Ashburn reports from the North Lawn.
Brian, as GOP candidates prepare to field questions on the health of the country, the White House is tooting its own horn.
Do you believe America is better off than it was 7 years ago?
The White House is pushing its domestic policy agenda. White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest briefed reporters with a series of slides. He says, yes, America is better off after Obama. He cited 4.9% unemployment, premium growth in job-based health care coverage, and a robust economy.
In fact, the U.S. economy has recovered faster than any other advanced economy in the world.
Only 30% of likely U.S. voters think the country is heading in the right direction, according to a new Rasmussen Reports national telephone survey. And GOP frontrunner Donald Trump definitely doesn't agree. He says America is broke.
Big problem. We have a country not doing well. We owe $19 trillion. Essentially, we're bust. We've got no money. We've got no money. We just had a budget approved for $2 trillion with $21 trillion. We have no money.
The White House is trying to solidify President Obama's legacy and get a Democrat in the White House. The president will begin campaigning in the summer after the conventions. Brian.
Thank you, Lauren Ashburn at the White House. The United States faces the highest terror threat level since the 9/11 attacks. That comment from a high-ranking member of Congress today as top intelligence leaders testify on Capitol Hill. Wyatt Goolsby is here with more.
Yes, Brian, from Chinese and Russian ambition to war in Syria to counterterrorism and recruitment from ISIS, the heads of top intelligence departments agreed with Congress that the U.S. faces lots of potential threats around the world.
And training of the next generation of collectors,
The directors of national intelligence, the CIA, the FBI, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and the NSA all testifying before Congress this morning. For more than an hour, House members asked questions about national security.
In their investigation that led to the arrest.
That included threats from outside and inside the country. Cyber terrorism, for example, will continue to be a concern in the years ahead.
Our concern, our responsibility, and our intent, of course, is to be able to collect the threat information so we convey to those who are responsible for defending and, in the case of, say, cybercom attacking, that they have the adequate intelligence to bring to bear for that.
Because the hearing was open to the public, the department heads couldn't go into detail about some aspects of national security. Today's hearing comes just 2 weeks after intelligence leaders presented the potential military risks posed from various nations around the world. It's why they agree intelligence continues to be vital to national security. Brian?
Thank you, Wyatt. At that same hearing, the FBI director says the agency's dispute with Apple is the hardest question he's seen in government. Apple refuses to hack into the iPhone of a San Bernardino terror suspect. Catherine Szeltner explores a Catholic approach to the security versus privacy debate.
The FBI and Apple are at a standoff when tech and terrorism collide. Two San Bernardino gunmen, partly inspired by ISIS, killed 14 people in December. The government wants Apple to hack into one of the shooters' iPhones, but the tech giant says no.
The FBI wants Apple to create a system that won't lock investigators out of the phone as they try millions of password combinations. But Apple says if they do that, hackers could unlock phones they don't even have physical access to.
In an interview on ABC's World News Tonight with David Muir, Apple's CEO defends the stance.
Can the government compel Apple to write software that we believe would make hundreds of millions of customers vulnerable around the world, including the U.S.?
This goes to the heart of our republic and our system, the rights of the individual versus the obligation of a government to keep its citizens safe.
Former CIA officer Claire Lopez says it's crucial the government looks at the terrorist phone, but it's not the end-all be-all.
I think that the FBI needs to be following up on a whole spectrum of other leads, and I would hope that they are.
But how should Catholics approach the debate over security versus privacy?
There's not a black and white answer to this. I mean, it's an area of prudential judgment.
Dominican priest Father Thomas Petrie says this debate will evolve with technology as people put more of their own thoughts into their smartphone.
The question is, when you put those things onto a device, is it more like writing in a diary? Or is it the case that these iPhones are so much a part of people's lives that it's no longer just a diary, it's really an extension of self?
It's a question that will face technology and theology beyond 2016. Catherine Szeltner, EWTN News Nightly.
Very interesting. Thank you, Catherine. Italy's Senate votes to grant legal recognition to civil unions for gay couples after a bitter years-long battle. The legislation stops far short of authorizing gay marriage in that predominantly Catholic country. It must still pass the lower chamber of deputies in order to become law. The Vatican has kept its distance from this debate, insisting only on the truth that civil union does not equal marriage. Well, as is his custom, Pope Francis answered journalist questions returning to Rome from Mexico last week. He touched on thorny issues, prompting some to question the wisdom of these in-flight news conferences. Ed Penton with EWTN's National Catholic Register joining us from Rome. Ed, what do you see as the issues of these conferences that the Holy Father holds in flight returning from his international trips?
Okay, Brian. Well, they've been done for quite a while now, but I think the problem that a lot of people saw at the last one is that he was speaking about a lot of things off the cuff, and rather sensitive things as well regarding politics in the U.S. Of course, there was a reference to an unspoken reference to Donald Trump in it, which caused quite an outcry. And then there was the issue on contraception and the Zika virus, which called into question, at least seemed to call into question, some of the church's teaching on that issue. This caused a lot of problems for some people in the sense that the Pope was sort of veering into issues which was said off the cuff in an informal way, which probably should have been said or not said at all. And so that's been the issue. And so people are trying to say if something could be done about that, or if these interviews are a good idea altogether.
Do you think part of the problem is that these conferences are given after exhausting trips? They're long. He's standing the whole time. Don't you think that probably sets kind of a stage for problems?
It could be, yes. I mean, in the past, Benedict and John Paul II started this tradition. They usually used to speak at the beginning of the trips, and then because some things that they would say kind of overshadowed the trips because they were controversial. This isn't the first time these have been controversial, that it kind of eclipsed what happened in the trips going forward. So he's now doing them on the way back. But whether that's a good thing or not, I don't know. But certainly people are happy with these press conferences. I mean, Cardinal Napier was he praised the Pope's candor, and the journalists are happy because, it's a chance to get to speak to the Pope. So it would be a shame to lose these interviews.
Do you expect these news conferences to continue then as the Pope continues to travel?
I think they probably will. I think the Vatican, from what I could tell from talking to some Vatican officials, they don't seem particularly concerned about this issue. They're kind of used to kind of controversy surrounding them. But I think the Pope is very much his own man. He likes to use these interviews to speak to people from the heart, and I think he's going to continue that tradition.
Ed Penton joining us from Rome tonight. Thank you, Ed.
Thanks, Brian.
Coming up, the aftermath of deadly storms. Some states declare disasters. And murder investigation, the growing mystery behind the Michigan shooting spree. "48 hours of stormy weather leaves deep scars from the Gulf Coast to the Atlantic coast. The National Weather Service reports tornado touchdowns in several states. Thanks for joining us this Thursday evening. I'm Brian Patrick. Some of those twisters were caught on camera. Another deadly round of storms pummels states up and down the East Coast.
He opened the front door, and when he did, he says, "Mama, tornado, tornado." And he ran, and I ran.
After 2 days of storms with more than 50 tornadoes reported, 7 people have died and hundreds of thousands are now without power. In Virginia, a state of emergency is declared. Tornadoes left dozens injured, several critically, and 4 dead.
This is tragic, man. I've never seen nothing like this before.
3 people in a mobile home were killed, including a 2-year-old boy. Powerful winds lifted their trailer almost 300 yards, slamming it into a church.
Our prayers goes out to the 3 people that lost their life, and we just thank God that, we went through a lot of damage, but the church is still standing, and we're going to recover.
Cars crumpled like aluminum cans on the highway.
The cars were tossed about, and I'm just so sorry that people were killed.
The twister tore down power lines and splintered trees, trapping some people in the wreckage.
The glass started caving in on me, and I didn't know what to do. It was scary.
3 more tornadoes touching down in Florida, packing ferocious winds. In North Carolina, 5 tornadoes left a path of mass destruction. 4 people were inside this home when the heavy rains and winds sent a massive tree toppling on the roof. They miraculously got out safely.
Our heart just goes out to anybody that's lost their homes or, their loved ones or anything in this.
The storm damage is still being assessed tonight. States are seeking federal disaster aid to help with the cleanup. A lawyer for the family of a man charged in the deadly Michigan shooting says they know of no motive for that shooting spree. Paul Velakis, the lawyer, tells ABC Jason Dalton acted depressed in the days before the shootings. When his wife questioned him about it, he told her he was tired. The 45-year-old is in the Kalamazoo County Jail after reportedly admitting to the Saturday shootings. Police say he worked as an Uber driver, picking up fares between 3 separate shootings. They left 6 people dead and 2 injured. The Knights of Columbus team up with In Defense of Christians, producing a new television spot. It urges action to protect persecuted Christians in the Middle East.
It's not a partisan issue. John Kasich, Ted Cruz, and Marco Rubio have declared it genocide. Hillary Clinton has too. A majority of the American people agree. This is what Christians and other religious minorities are facing at the hands of ISIS in the Middle East. But the State Department still hasn't labeled this extermination what it is. It's time for action. Sign the petition at stopthechristiangenocide.org.
Patrick Kelly is Vice President for Public Policy with the Knights of Columbus. Patrick, the ad says genocide is not political, but it's going to take the action of politicians. What action could result from a genocide declaration?
Well, the action would be, it would give the U.S. government a greater sense of urgency and moral responsibility to take action. It could trigger treaty obligations, but the most important thing is really the leadership of the United States and the United States government to be a leader in the international community and to name and claim what is actually happening to Christians. The words have weight here.
Our White House correspondent Lauren Ashburn recently asked White House spokesman Josh Earnest why the administration hasn't used the word genocide. Listen to Josh's response.
The decision to apply this term to this situation is an important one. It has significant consequences, and it matters for a whole variety of reasons, both legal and moral. But it doesn't change our response. And the fact is that this administration has been aggressive, even though that term has not been applied, in trying to protect religious minorities who are victims or potential victims of violence.
Patrick, what is your reaction to that?
Well, I mean, I again would say it's a question of moral leadership. The U.S. has always been seen as a leader in the defense of vulnerable populations, whether that's here in the U.S. or overseas. And I think it matters. These words matter. We need to look at what's happening to Christians and speak the truth. You know, we all know the example of Rwanda, what happened there in the 1990s. Universally, we all recognized that that was a genocide, but the world really shied away from it, and it was not called as such. And we can't make that mistake again.
Recently, a high-level State Department official did meet with some Christian leaders as well as Yazidis in the Middle East and Iraq. Does that encourage you?
Yeah, I mean,
might happen?
Yeah, it encourages me. I mean, anytime the State Department is there talking with those people on the ground who experience the atrocities, it is encouraging. But I think we do need this sense of urgency, and perhaps that's a beginning of that urgency.
Isn't Congress also considering a resolution?
It is. There is a congressional resolution about genocide. It has 200 bipartisan co-sponsors. It's actually going to a markup in the Foreign Affairs Committee next week.
Are there others taking a stand for this?
Yes, in fact, the European Union has taken a stand, the European Parliament. Genocide scholars have taken a stand. Also, the Pope Francis has declared it a genocide.
Remind us how our viewers can make their voices heard on this issue.
Make your voices heard by going to stopthechristiangenocide.org.
Stopthechristiangenocide.org.
Yes.
Knights of Columbus, our dear friend Patrick Kelly. Thanks for joining us, Patrick.
Thank you, Brian.
We appreciate the Knights very much and their support of EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you.
Up next, shaping religious education, the effort to reinvigorate the faith of a new generation of Catholics. And the Pope answers the questions of children in an intriguing new book. The night can seem vast and very dark, but in these days I have been able to observe that in these people there are many lights who proclaim hope. Pope Francis talking to the Mexican people at the conclusion of his trip earlier this month. Thank you for joining us this Thursday evening. I'm Brian Patrick. Well, Vice President Joe Biden meets with business and government leaders today in Mexico City. He arrived Wednesday for talks to strengthen economic ties with Mexico. The U.S. Secretaries of Commerce, Energy, and the Interior are with the vice president on the trip. Trade between Mexico and the U.S. adds up to about $1.5 billion a day. This is round 3 of high-level economic talks between these two countries. The World Health Organization says women in countries hit by the Zika virus should continue breastfeeding their babies. In guidance issued today, WHO says there's no evidence of Zika being transmitted to babies through breast milk. Zika has been declared a global emergency because of possible links to birth defects. The virus is spreading explosively across the Americas. Tens of thousands of Catholics from across the world converge on Los Angeles today.
Let us live our lives so that all might see.
The Archdiocese kicking off the 60th Annual Religious Education Congress with Youth Day today. Speakers and workshops are being offered through Sunday in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese. Christina Lamas, Associate Director of the Office of Religious Education for the Archdiocese of LA, Skyping with us from Anaheim. Christina, can you tie the theme of your Congress with the Jubilee Year of Mercy for us?
Well, we have a theme for Youth Day, which is #HopeBound, and the theme for Congress is Boundless Mercy. And the two are intertwinedly connected because #HopeBound is leading teens to Christ and to understand and to reveal God's mercy for themselves and for others that they encounter.
So you are in charge of Youth Day. Can you tell us what you hope to accomplish with the young people there?
An encounter with Christ. If they encounter Christ in liturgy, if they encounter Christ with another teen, if they encounter Christ in prayer, if they encounter Christ in a workshop, if they encounter Christ having lunch, that is the goal of Youth Day, to have an encounter with Christ.
Can you talk a little bit about reinvigorating religious education in dioceses around the country and the world? Some of them are pretty dull.
Well, we've experienced that as well. But I think the more that we listen to young people, the more that we meet them where they're at, that we begin to catechize to them in a language and in their culture, we begin to reach them and we begin to help them understand how Christ is speaking to them in their own reality.
Where does this start? Are you using social media because that's where kids are?
Absolutely. We have a team, especially here at Youth Day, who is pretty much very active on social media, retweeting, capturing images. And these are all quotes of young people and hoping that that would invigorate their own faith and, again, encounter Christ.
You bring people from all over the world to this Congress. How does what's happening there in the Los Angeles Archdiocese this weekend really affect all of us as Catholics?
Well, I think it brings hope, hope of a church that is alive. It's not the future, it is the present. And to see them excited, to see them engaged in their faith brings hope, especially in a world that sometimes is not portraying that on the media. So to be present with young people, to have that hope and to see that come alive, it's something that's incredible to witness.
What's working there for you that you might want to pass on to other dioceses?
Listen to young people. Encourage them to be a part of something and listen to what they have to say and let them know that you are there to foster that relationship with Christ along with them.
It starts with listening. Christina Lamas, thanks for joining us through Skype from Anaheim tonight.
Thank you for having me.
And Pope Francis is listening to young people. He answers some tough questions from kids. The Pope will soon release his first children's book. Dear Pope Francis hits U.S. bookshelves March 1st. In it, Francis answers questions from children around the world, such as, what did God do before creating the world? And how did Jesus walk on water? The publisher says it had a hard time narrowing the questions down to just 30. Until tomorrow, for the EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Brian Patrick. We leave you tonight with spectacular new images of God's creation. European Southern Observatory captured the entire Milky Way galaxy. It is the sharpest map of the Milky Way made to date.